This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, guys. Let's continue with the discussion of encapsulation. In the last class, we discussed about encapsulation, and in today's class, let's see how to programmatically achieve this encapsulation. So at the nutshell, the summary of encapsulation is making the data member as private and writing the corresponding public data handler methods, so-called getter and setter methods. So in today's session, let's see how to write this getter method and setter method. All right, I'll start explaining you what is the process to write the setter method as well as getter method. Okay, let's start with the discussion now. Let me select some colors. Observe here, please. Now imagine I have a private data member called private integer age. Please observe the data type of this is integer, right? Let me select some good colors for this, right? So the data type of age is integer. Okay, so now I want to initialize this variable. How do I initialize this variable? I need a method, and that method is technically called as which method? Setter method. So setter method and getter method should be public. So hence it should be a public method. In the public method, I'm going to write the method name as set because setter method should have setter. It should start with something called set. Okay, set what? Set the age. The main name says it is called set the age. It's called set age. Now observe, when you want to set the age, someone has to pass the age to this. Someone has to pass the age. So let's take, let me consider this as something called, let's say, a blank. Okay, this is called fill in the blank. Someone has to fill this blank. All right. So, and I'm going to make it as void because it's not going to return anything. So the method does not return anything, hence it must be void. Okay, so I have a variable called age, so I have to set the age. All right, so it should be public method and the method name is set age, and I should have a blank, and I'm going to call the blank as a. The name of this blank is called a. So if someone wants to call this method, they should call the method something like this. For example, if someone wants to set the age, set age of, let's say, 23, someone wants to set the age, they should call it as set age of 23, right? Set the age of, let's say, 40, right? Set age of -5, set age of 400. But if you carefully observe here, there are certain data which is really nonsense. Set age of -5, set age of 400 does not really make any sense. Age cannot be a negative value. Similarly, age listening, I mean, if you listen, someone is telling that his age is 80 or 100. Okay, up to a certain extent, believable. 110, believable. Maybe old generation people used to live, but 400 and all crazy. It cannot be. So these two are really invalid. These two are invalid, right? So how do you make it valid? I have to apply within this. I have to apply the validation. Before I actually assign the value to this age, I have to perform the validation, or I have to perform the kind of filtration. How to perform the validation or filtration. How to perform this validation or filtration? Let's see to it, okay? So whereas these two look to be realistic values, right? What looks to be a realistic value? This looks to be a realistic value, right? So before you actually set the age here, you have to check. So when I pass 23, can I call it as an argument which has been passed here? In second case, 40 is been passed. In this case, -5 is been passed. In this case, we're passing 400. So it means to say, very long back I taught you that a method or a constructor, listen to me carefully, a method or a constructor which is taking some external value means this is called as argument. These are all called arguments, right? So this should be, what do we call it as? Parameter, right? This should be a parameter and all these things are called argument. So how to do it? Let's see to it now, right? Now, how to write a parameter now? A parameter must be in simple, it is just like this, okay? The name of the parameter, I call it as A. It can be any name. It can be any name. Obviously, you are expecting an integer data, hence the data type must be integer, which is exactly the same as here, right? So it means to say there is a method which is taking integer as the parameter. So I call it as the parameter. I hope you already know what is the meaning of method parameter, okay? So inside this method, you have to perform a validation. What is that validation that you have to perform? First thing, if given data, the data that we pass, this is called argument, right? The argument that we pass, these are all arguments, okay? The argument that we pass, which has been assigned to this, the argument comes and sits here to the parameter. So if this A is greater than 0, it should be greater than 0, right? And the age must be less than, let's say 100, or in my case, in our institute, we don't take like, very Buddhas and all, but let us be very realistic. Let's say if it is, right, if the age is greater than 0 and if the age is less than 100, then this looks to be a valid age, else this looks to be an invalid age. So I can say system.out.println foo invalid age. You're not initializing it, okay? Just observe. The method starts here and the method ends here. Okay, so here we are performing some kind of validation. If the age, that is nothing but A, that's a parameter, if it is greater than 0 and if that age is less than 100, then it's a valid age, correct? Or else it is an invalid age. So here within this, I have to basically initialize it into the value like this. How do you access this? This dot age, this dot age, this dot age equal to a, this dot age equal to a. This is how we should access it, okay? This dot age equal to a, else it is invalid. Now carefully observe this program. If someone wants to set really the age, if someone wants to initialize the age, they cannot access it directly age because it has become private now. Private member cannot be accessed. Only public member can be accessed. So the outside code can access this public member by using a method called set age. But within the method, I'm performing the kind of validation. This is called data validation or data filtration, right? How am I doing it? I'm accessing it. If it is a greater than 0 and less than 100, then it seems to be a good or the valid age. So this is where I'm initializing. This is called initialization. This is called initialization. Initialization or setting the data. We are setting the data, okay? Or else it is invalid age. Hopefully things are clear now, right? So now observe these examples here. When I say set age of 23, what is that argument that I'm passing? The argument is going to be 23 now, right? Let me use some different color codes. Okay, let me use this, right? Someone is going to pass this 23 now, okay? So what is the data that we are passing? 23. So 23 is greater than 0 and 23 is less than 100. So hence it goes inside the if and initialization, right? Perfectly fine. So let's say in the second case, I'm going to pass some data which is not a valid data, okay? So let's say someone is going to pass 40. So when the 40 is being passed, okay, 40 is also a valid data, right? It goes inside because 40 is greater than 0 and 40 is less than 100. So it works perfectly. So you're initializing the age to 40 or else you're not initializing and it becomes an invalid age. Similarly, the last one, right? Let's say I'm just going to take some other crazy number. Okay, for example, we're passing 5, minus 5. Minus 5 is an invalid age. So what is the value that we are passing here? Minus 5, which is an invalid age. So when it goes to this, minus 5 is not greater than 0. Minus 5 is not greater than 0. Hence, this condition becomes false. Hence, it will not go inside the if. Rather, it goes to the else condition. In else condition, it's going to print a message called invalid age. Not only printing message, but it also does not initialize the age. So I'm making sure the age gets initialized only if the age is really a valid age. If it is an invalid age, then it is not initialized. Hence, automatically, this becomes 0 because it is integer. So this is how I'm protecting my data member through setter method. Okay. So what do you need to know about this setter method then? You need to know many things about this setter method. What are those many things that you need to know about setter method? First thing is that setter method should be public, very important. And setter method does not return anything, hence it should be void, right? And it should take one parameter, and the data type of parameter depends on the data type of that value, data type of that variable that we would like to initialize. So almost this and this must be same. This and this must be same. You can, instead of this a, you can also consider it as age, not an issue. An instance variable, that is global variable, and local variable can have the same name, which we discussed this a long back in a concept called variable shadowing. So this local instance variable, nothing but global variable, and a local variable, nothing but a parameter, can have the same name, right? How are we going to differentiate? This dot age refers to global variable, just age refers to a local variable. So we discussed about it long back. So these are all the rules. If I write these rules somewhere here, okay, just observe. I'm going to write these rules. What are the rules? The first one, setter method must be public. Setter method must be public, the first rule. What is the rules? So these are all rules for writing setter method, okay? Rules for writing or defining setter method. Okay, first thing, setter method must be public. Second thing, setter method must be void. Setter method must be void. The type of parameter, type means data type of, okay, type of parameter must be same as variable type. Which variable type? Global variable type, right? So obviously it is void means it cannot have any return statement. Setter method cannot have any return statement, okay? Setter method can't have any return statement. So these are all the fundamentals of this, right? Setter method. These are all the rules. Got it now? So let me basically let me execute this, or let me write a a setter method here in my Eclipse. Let me show you by demonstrating it. So the first thing, I have something called age. What I'm going to do, I'm going to write the method called set age, set the age, and it should be public and void. So there must be a variable called integer age. Then we should initialize this dot age, right, equal to age. But when should I do it? Only by applying if-else condition. It's up to you to apply the if-else condition, right? So I should initialize only when the age is greater than 0 and when the age is less than 100. This is a valid age. Otherwise, I just have to write a error message saying that invalid age. So this is how I write the setter method for it. Similarly, if you wish to write the setter method even for this percentage, then how do you do it? Set percentage. Let's say I'm going to minimize this. The method name is set percentage. The data type of percentage is double, hence I should take double percentage as the parameter here. Double percentage as the parameter. Then how do you perform this condition? Percent. When the percentage is valid, when the percentage is greater than or equal to 0, when the percentage is greater than or equal to 0, and the percentage is less than or equal to 100. Beyond that, any percentage is invalid, right? So if this is the case, what do? You initialize it. So this dot percentage equal to percentage. So this is how you are initializing. This is called initialization, right? So this is called the setter method for age, and this is called the setter method for the percentage. If you wish, I'll pause here myself for 10 seconds. You can go through this code. And then you can ask me questions in the chat window. Any questions? No, man. No, Navita. If you change the method name, it will not show any error. Please understand it. You are a programmer, okay? How compiler knows that method name should be like this? But it is just a good practice. That's it. Shruti, sir, if we initialize the instance variable at the time of declaration, then we will not need the setter method. Yes. Now, Shruti, go back to the basic question, basic fundamentals. If you initialize the percentage to something, let's say I'm going to initialize this percentage to, let's say 89.2. It means to say you create 100 students. For all the 100 students, percentage becomes 89.2. Do you think that's a logical thing? All the student percentage, will it be same? Definitely no. Each students might have different percentages. So that's why you should not initialize it here, ideally. Right, Shruti? Now, Vishal Ghosh is asking question, sir, if we have a number of variables, then the program size will increase as we'll have to write number of setter method. So Vishal Ghosh, what you are telling is correct. So if you have hundreds of variables, then you will have to write hundreds of setter method and hundreds of getter method. Right now, I have taught you only how to write a setter method, but I haven't even taught you how to write a getter method. So definitely you will have uh, multiple I mean methods. So obviously the number of lines of code is going to be increased, but that is not an issue, right? That is not an issue. Yeah, Naveen Vasu, please show me that setter method rules. Okay, I'll show you. So first just go through it. Okay, first just go through it. These are all the rules for setter method. Any other questions, please? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Now what I'll do, uh, Pallavi, you cannot access private member. That is the whole reason why we don't want a variable to be accessed outside. That is the reason we made it as private. Now, if you say that I want to access means you cannot access. How can you access? Your intention of making it as private itself is so that not to access that variable. Now, again, if you want it to be private, it is meaningless. Okay, same data hiding encapsulation, same. So now I have taught you how to write this particular setter method. Now let us see how to write a getter method. What does this getter method means? The getter method means, as like I explained you yesterday, the meaning of getter method here, observe, the meaning of getter method is to get the data or fetch the data or retrieve the data, right? So it means to say you have a variable called age. You have a variable called age, which has a setter method, which is responsible for setting the data. Similarly, I should write one getter method. How do I write this getter method? Writing the getter method is pretty simple. Obviously, the getter method must also be public. I write a method called public called get age. So this method should return the age because it is a getter method. Getter method is responsible for returning or fetching or retrieving. Hence, it should return age. Return age. Very, very easy. Observe now. So what is the data type of age? Integer. Hence, the method return type must also be integer. Okay. So very simple. The get method, that is nothing but a getter method, must be public. That's the standard rule. All the getter and setter method must be public. So rather here we are returning the age. While returning the age, the method must have the return type. This is how we write the getter method. Okay. If we apply this same thing, if we implement in Eclipse, the program looks like this. Method should be public get age, public get age. So what you should return? Return age. What is the data type of age? Integer. Hence method must have the return type called integer. Similarly, one more method called public right? Get percentage method name. So we should return percentage. What is the data type of this percentage? Double. The data type of percentage is double. Okay, this is how it should work. Hopefully things are clear. So this is called getter methods and these are all called setter methods. And in general, they all are called data handler methods. They all are called as data handler methods. That's it. This is how we write the getter method and setter method, right? So let me teach you one more example on this. Let's imagine I have a class called as city class or user class. Okay. So user, we create an object of user. User has something called username, username, um, username, and password. Username and the password. Okay, the user has something called username and the password. So basically here we should have two things. One is the getter method for username and the getter setter method for these two properties. First thing, it should be private. This is the first rule, right? The second rule, that whenever I write okay, fine. Now here I'll write the rules for getter method. Okay, what are the rules for defining getter method? What are the rules for defining the getter method? First of all, the getter method must be public. Next, getter method getter method must have return type must have return type it must have return type. Okay, the parameter will not be there, no parameter. Okay, it must have a return type. That's it. Getter method must be public, getter method must have the return type, and it should not have any parameter. It should not have any parameter, of course. Okay, these are all the three rules for defining a getter method. Okay, so above was for setter method and this is for getter method. Now let us go back to this, sorry, this Eclipse. Here I have something called a user class which has username and the password. This is called, these two are called as, like, fields. It's also called as properties, fields or properties, however you want, you can call it fields or properties or anything, right? Next, I should write the public method. Public set username, set the username. Now apply the rules. What are the rules of this? Setter method must be public, super. Setter method must be void because it does not have any return type. So it should be void. Next, third rule, type of parameter must be same as global variable type. Okay, what is the type of username? String username. Hence, we should take string username. Here, you should assign this dot username equal to username. If you observe, I'm not performing any validation here. Please try to understand. I'm not performing any validation. If you want, apply validation here. Apply validation. What do you mean by validation here? What do you mean by validation? See guys, you must be knowing in some cases, the validations are like this. Your username, let's say, for example, the validations for username is this. I'm just taking a rough example on this, okay? The validations for the username like this, okay? The first thing is that it should be minimum of let's say 8 characters, okay? Maximum of let's say 25 characters, okay? Maximum of 25 characters. Next, let's say it cannot have special characters, cannot have special characters, let's say, except dot underscore. Let's say dot is allowed, underscore is allowed. Apart from that, you cannot have any special characters. Like this, you can have etc, etc, etc. You can have some more validations. If you want to perform these validations, you can apply that validations here. But right now, I'm not writing any validations. But if you wish, you can write such validation. Okay. Now I'm going to write the getter method. Get username. Get the username. What I'm supposed to do? You should return the username. What is the data type of username? String. Hence, the method return type should be string. So this is how I write the getter method as well as setter method, which are so called as data handler methods. Not only that, like this, I should write the setter method and the getter method for even the password, right? Set the password. So the advantage of making this method name as this, so one can easily understand what you are trying to set, okay? So you can apply validation similarly. This dot password equal to the password. Password rules also especially in banking applications and all, password rules are very, very complex. You can apply that validation here. Similarly, you can just mention get the password, get the password, return password. Okay, this is how it works. That's it. So basically this entire class, just go through this for 10 seconds, go through it. Go through this, please. Okay, good. Any questions on this? Please ask me in the chat window if you have any questions on this. Okay, thank you. Now, let me explain this some more things. Please observe. Here, there's one more, okay? Whenever we write any class, which is a public class, this public class called anything, okay, user, right? Here, all the fields are there. We have many fields or the properties. We have the fields, or they're also called properties. Now each field has, let's say, private. Each field has, this fields, and each field has getter and setter methods. Each field has something called getter and setter methods. Please observe this. Such a type of class, such type of class, right? What type of class it is? It's a class which is public class, and these fields are private. Fields are private, and the each field has getter and setter methods, and these getter and setter methods are also public. Such a type of class is technically called as, please observe, Java Bean class. Java Bean class. Okay. Now observe, this is called as Java Bean class. It's called as Java Bean, right? So Java Bean class. And if I create an object of such class, user u equal to new user, user u equal to new user. So this is called a bean object. What do you call? Bean object. It's called as the bean object. Okay. So this is called as a bean class, and this is called as a bean object. This is a standard terminology that we use. This is not a keyword. Okay. This is a terminology. Terminology, or it's a jargon that we use. Okay. So it is one of the important interview question. Don't forget it, right? They ask, explain Java Bean specification. Explain Java Bean specification. Extremely important interview question. Are you clear? What is the meaning of it? We know what is Java Bean now. What is the meaning of specification? Specification means guidelines, or rules. Okay. What are the Java Bean specifications, or what are the Java Bean rules? Let's understand what are the rules of this Java Bean. The first rule says that Bean class must be a public class. Bean class must be a public and non-abstract class. The Bean class must be a public non-abstract class. This is the first rule. Are you clear now? I'm going to change the font size to, let's say, 20. Okay, so I'm going to make it as a little bold. Maybe I'm going to change the color to, all right, this is going to be the color for it. Okay, super. This is the first rule. So your bean class must be a public class, and it should not be an abstract class. Question, you may not know what is the meaning of abstract class. This is another thing. Okay, sure. I don't know what is the meaning of abstract class. Please observe here. I'll explain you. Whenever we write any class, right? Whenever we write any class, let's say, for example, I'm going to write a class here. I'm going to write a class. For example, I write a class something like this. Class called anything. Okay, let's say city. I write a class called a city class. By chance, if I make this class as abstract, in Java, there is a concept called abstract. If I make this class as abstract, then I will not be able to create an object of this class. I cannot create an object like this. City C equal to new city. This is not possible. You cannot create an object. So why we understand this in a separate chapter called abstract class? That's our tomorrow's class. The topic of tomorrow's class is abstract class, right? Monday I'm going to teach you interface. At that time I will explain you cannot create an object of abstract class. We get compilation error. That's why whenever you write a class which is a bean class, right here, for example, this is my bean class. If someone makes this class as abstract by chance, then we cannot create an object of this class. All right, that is the reason that this class should be non-abstract class. It should be non-abstract class. That is the first rule that I have written it here. The bean class must be a public and non-abstract class. Second rule says that the bean class properties, everything should be this in color, everything should be bold, everything should be like this. Okay, the bean class, okay, properties or properties of bean class, properties must be private. This is extremely important. It must be private. How do I underline this? I don't know. It must be private. Then after that, the third rule says that each variable, each property must have public getter and setter method. Each property must have public getter and setter method. Each property. So this is the third rule. Okay. Then these are all the main rules. Okay. Bean class must be a public class and non-abstract class. Bean class must have the property and must have, ideally, it must not have any constructor, it must not have custom or parameterized constructor. It must not have any parameterized constructor. Okay, so these are all the four rules of this bean class. Okay. I hope you understood what are these rules. Here, question, why it should not have a constructor. I explained you a brief about what is that abstract class and non-abstract class. You can, if the class is abstract, then you can create an object, and if the class is non-abstract, then you cannot create if it is an abstract, then you cannot create an object. If it is a non-abstract class, then only we can create an object, and hence the bean class must be non-abstract, means I should be able to create an object out of it. Okay. Similarly, the next rule, bean class properties must be private so that it is protected, very well protected, which cannot be accessed outside. Then each property must have public getter and setter methods. It is methods. Okay. The last one must not have any custom or parameterized constructor. What is the reason? Why? Why it is so? Think about it. Why it is so, and just message me in the chat box. Why? Smita, I'll answer your question. Is it compulsory to define getter and setter method? I'll explain that. No, Srijit, wrong answer. No, my question, I'll repeat, why it should not have constructor. Yes, Vishal is perfectly correct. Yes, Vishal is 100% correct. Observe now, everyone, I'll explain you. Vishal is correct. See, what is the whole purpose of writing the constructor? Tell me, at least first. What is the purpose of writing the constructor? If I write a constructor, yes, perfectly. Pankaj, correct. Vinod is also correct. Observe. This is a constructor. The constructor purpose is to initialize the variables, username and the password. Observe, that's what I'm doing it here. Can I call it as a parameterized constructor? The purpose of this parameterized constructor is to initialize the variables. But then what is the purpose of setter method here? Setter method purpose is also initialize the variables. Yes or no? Why you want both constructor as well as setter method to initialize? That's why You initialize, in case of bean class, you initialize an instance variable using setter method. That's why you need not to have, or you don't require this constructor. Are you clear? That is the last rule of this. This is the last rule. So these are all the 4 rules or Java Bean specifications. Okay. This is one important question in the interview. Explain Java Bean specifications. Okay. Java Bean specifications, not in Java Bean specifications. Specifications means guidelines or rules. Okay. Next question, what are the advantages of this Java Bean? Sorry, what are the advantages of encapsulation? Right? Let me write advantages of let's say encapsulation. What are the advantages of encapsulation? Now, let me write the advantages of this encapsulation. First is data protection, or data hiding. Next, we can perform data validation or filtration. You can avoid unauthorized data access. Okay, we can avoid someone accessing this, simply accessing this data. You can avoid this, right? These are all called unauthorized access of the data. So there is one more last advantage. Data can be made, very important, read only or write only. Okay, data can be made read only or write only. These are all the advantages of encapsulation. So when I say read only and write only, we'll have to understand what is the meaning of it. Okay, what is the meaning of read only data or write only data? Through this, here Smita asked me a question. What was the question that Smita has asked me here? Tick, 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 tick. What was the question? Sir, sir, if setter is defined, then compulsory to define getter method. So I answered her no. You can write only getter method or only setter method. Okay, that's an answer for Smita. So why so, sir? What is the advantage? Advantage is this: data can be made read only or data can be made write only. So this is the last part which I'll have to explain. What is the meaning of read only data and what is the meaning of write only data? Okay, I will explain this. So I think first 3 advantages are pretty straightforward. Data protection or data hiding. You can perform data validation, right? You can avoid unauthorized access of the data because you have made the variable as private. So hence one cannot access the data directly, right? Good. Now the last one we'll have to understand, that is what is the meaning of read-only data or write-only data? Let me explain this. Let's say integer I. Let's say this is a variable, okay? If I say option number 1, like final integer I equal to 10, it means to say, please carefully observe, I already assigned a value called 10 into this I, and moreover this is final, hence one cannot change the data. So this is called read-only data. Read-only data. Now data has become read-only. What is the meaning of reading and writing? Right? So I assign I equal to 25. For example, forget about this. Just observe left side. I equal to 25. What am I doing? I'm initializing, correct? So this is called initialization. I'm initializing the data. Are you clear? So this is also technically called as writing the data. I'm writing the data. Are you clear? I'm writing a data means assigning the data. So somewhere I'm going to access it, system.out.println of I. So what am I doing? I'm accessing or fetching the data. This is called fetching. I'm fetching the data or getting the data. This is also called reading the data. I'm reading the data. This is called write the data. So basically assigning a variable value to a variable is called a write process. Fetching the data is called read process. Now, let us apply this concept on the first scenario here. So what am I doing here? I have a variable. The data stored in this variable is 10. The data type is int. It means to say you can only read the data. You cannot change the data here. Can I assign I equal to 40 here? It beautifully gives you, right, compilation error. The why compilation error? Compilation error because, oh, where is the data called? Where is this red? Yes, here this is going to give you compilation error. Why compilation error? Because this is already final. Final data cannot be modified. It means to say you cannot set the data, you cannot set the data, or you cannot write the data. Not possible, right? That's why we say this data you can only fetch. You can only do whatever you want. System.out.println of I. Okay, you can take this data, or you already have I. You can save this I into the database. You can save this I, nothing but 10, into a file, right? It means to say you can only use this I, but you cannot write this data into the I. So that's why we call such a type of data as read-only data. Are you clear? Now, if I apply this concept in my Java Bean class or in my encapsulation, right? So how are we going to do that? Observe. Hmm. Let's say there is an application form. In the application form, I have something called application ID, which is nothing but not a string. Okay, for example, integer. Integer applicate. Oh, should be integer. Integer application ID is 55, and I don't want anyone to change this data. Then what I do, I make it as final. When you make it as final, no one can change the data. So this data becomes read only. So hence, in such case, you are writing this public method, right? Say public void set application ID. Observe now. Now observe, the setter method is responsible for initialization, right? This dot application ID equal to application ID. Now observe here, you're getting compilation error because the data is final. When a variable is final, you cannot modify that variable, correct? No, but you're trying to modify it. So you cannot modify it, you cannot write it because it's already final, it is already initialized the data. So it means to say if your data member is final and you don't want anyone to change the value, then writing the setter method is utter waste. It's useless. It's inappropriate. It is wrong. So for such method, you should not write this getter method, setter method at all. You should write only getter method. So you should say get application ID, right? So return application ID. What is the method return type? Of course, method return type should be int. So it means to say you have a data member which is final, means which is already initialized. Hence, you don't require setter method because data is already initialized. For such methods, you should write only getter method. So now we call this data as read-only data. Read-only data. So if someone asks, how do you make the data read-only? The answer is pretty simple. The answer is pretty simple. I define the data member, I declare the data member as private, and I write only getter method, no setter method. Are you clear? When you define a variable and write or define only getter method without the setter method, then we call such data as read-only data. I hope Smita has got the answer, right? Yes, Smita. Similarly, you can make the data write only. You don't want someone to read the data. You can make the data write only. How do you make the data write only? Let's say I have a class called mobile class. I have something called long, private long, private long mobile number, right? Private long mobile number. I write public void set mobile number. Set the mobile number, right? So then this dot mobile number equal to mobile number. So please observe this. I have made a variable here which is private, right? Sorry, yeah. Here I have an instance, a local variable. I'm taking a local variable initializing. So what am I doing here? I am setting the data, or setting or initializing the data. I'm initializing the data, or this is also called writing the data. I'm basically writing the data, all right? But I'm not going to write no getter method. It means to say I'm not going to give any getter method. So if someone wants to access the data, they cannot access the data. They can only set the data, right? So this is called making the data as write only, right? This is called write only data. So if someone asks, how do you make the write-only data? I declare a variable and I declare a private variable and I write only public setter method, but no getter method. So through this way, we are making the data as write only. So this is one of the advantage. If you want to make the data read only, or if you want to make the data write only, right? That's possible by using this, playing with this getter and setter method. Are you clear? If you want both read write, then both write setter method as well as getter method. That's what we do mostly in most of the cases. Clear? So these are all the fundamental concepts of encapsulation, and these are all the advantages of encapsulation. Oh, where did it go? Somewhere it was there. Okay, it is here. Advantages of encapsulation. Okay. That's it. This is about the encapsulation, which is very simple. So we learned what is encapsulation, right? And we also learned about how to achieve encapsulation, what is bean class, how to write the getter and setter method, what are the advantages, and we also learned what are the rules for encapsulation or Java bean. All right, that's it. That's about encapsulation. Okay, so thank you, and you can